and then disgustingly today trying to play petty politics on the backs of people with disabilities. That's shameful, Mr. Chair, and Canadians won't forget it.
Well, I'm kind of in shock. MP Elizabeth May of the Greens has done something that I agree with. Falun Gong, she's asking the government, she's bringing a petition forward asking the government to condemn.
On this 22nd meeting of the COVID-19 committee, otherwise known as something like the House of Commons. I'm here to present two petitions this morning. One relates to, and hundreds of signatures, on the issue of the treatment of Falun Gong practitioners by the People's Republic of China, and particularly the practice that's alleged of organ harvesting, involuntary organ harvesting, and ask the Government of Canada to condemn this practice and to publicly call for an end of the persecution of Falun Gong in the People's Republic of China.
So the Ethics Commissioner is underfunded. They're looking for $10 million, the Auditor General. Here's their answer. They don't have much, but you got to stay tuned for MP Harper.
This government cannot say when they will table the economic update, cannot identify how much money they have spent in the last 3 months, and cannot say what is the deficit of Canada. Is someone running this party, this country correctly in this government?
The Honourable Deputy.
Mr. Speaker, absolutely, we are running this country and we are supporting our economy. In fact, we appreciate that Canada currently is experiencing its greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression. That is why we have devoted nearly 11% of GDP to support Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. And I want to assure
See, there's less accountability when the House isn't actually sitting. It looks the same, but it isn't. They don't have the accountability. Now, MP Harder is livid. You got to see this.
Ministers, and I quote, to govern in a positive, open, and collaborative way. Ironically, as it stands, Parliament is currently closed for business. Opposition parties have little opportunity to hold the ruling party to account. Private members' bills cannot be tabled and legislation cannot be debated. Can the Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau himself, help us understand how all of this fits into his definition of so-called open government?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're here, right? I guess we're here. The opposition is asking questions. They have the equivalent of 8 question periods instead of 5 to ask questions. They have more time than before, so I don't know why they're not happy about it.
Ms. Harder.
That's like asking for a full meal, handing a few jelly beans and saying, why aren't you happy with that? Mr. Speaker, look, here's the thing. It's like switching a light on and off when it's convenient for the Prime Minister and for the Liberal Party. That's what they want to do here. That's not Parliament. That's not democracy. So when will Mr. Trudeau do the right thing, turn the lights on, and get back to work for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear that my colleagues are working. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, in this House we're all working very hard, Mr. Speaker, and we're answering the questions from the opposition. Why? Because it's extremely important. I sat there for like 7 years, Mr. Speaker, asking questions. I understand the importance.
We'll now go back to Ms. Harder. Ms. Harder.
The member opposite knows very well that he is misleading the Canadian public. This is not true Parliament. This is simply a special committee. Here's the thing. On the Liberal Party website, under the platform commitments, it says, and I quote, Parliament works best when its members are free to do what they have been elected to do, and that is be the voice for their communities and hold the government to account. This is a Liberal document. Did the Prime Minister forget that strengthening Parliament was a part of his 2019 platform commitments?
The Honourable Minister.
I thank the colleague for quoting our excellent platform, Mr. Speaker. That was a very, very good document. And the thing is, Mr. Speaker, I think we've reached a balance where MPs can come from different places, mostly around Ottawa, and ask questions, but also we can have colleagues from across the country asking questions, Mr. Speaker. So why is it better for my colleague, why is it better to have only 35 MPs participate instead of 338?
Ms. Harder.
Does the Prime Minister value democracy, or does he still look up to China's basic dictatorship?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, we're answering all the questions from the opposition, not only from the people in this room, but we're answering questions.
Back to Ms. Harder now. Ms. Harder.
They were elected.
I'll ask my question again. Does the member opposite, does the Prime Minister still value the basic dictatorship of China over Canada's democracy?
The Honourable Minister.
I don't know where the colleague wants to go from here, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to know from her, why is it not important for her that her colleagues participate directly?
Ms. Harder.
Mr. Trudeau wrote in to his ministers, and he said to them, I quote, "We continue to raise the bar on openness, effectiveness, and transparency. He went on to explain that, quote, this means government that is open by default." Now, we have a parliament that is currently shut down. Mr. Trudeau has shut it down and prevented us from being able to do the good work that Canadians expect us to do. Is this Mr. Trudeau's idea of open by default?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, you want to talk about shutting down Parliament? How about the times they prorogued Parliament twice, Mr. Speaker? Not once, but twice, when the Conservative government shut the Parliament. I was here, I was sitting on the other side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker. Quite the opposite now, we're taking all the questions. This place is open and we're answering questions.
One moment, please. One moment. I haven't acknowledged you yet. One moment, Ms. Harder, please. We've stopped the time there. I just want to remind the honourable members that there's questions and answers being given, so we want to hear both sides, just to keep the heckling down. Ms. Harder, please proceed.
In 2014, the leader of the Liberal Party developed a policy entitled Restoring Trust in Canada's Democracy. Ironic, because right now, again, Parliament is currently shut down. We are prevented from being able to do the good work that we are expected to do. But the Prime Minister at the time, he said this, he said, Canadians want their members of Parliament to be effective voices for their communities in Ottawa and not merely mouthpieces in their communities for an all-too-powerful Prime Minister. Sadly, Mr. Trudeau has become the all-too-powerful Prime Minister that he once believed should not exist. Why did he change his mind?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to know why my colleague wants to shut down the voice of her colleagues that could not speak and not participate in this room. Mr. Speaker, how would we vote on private members' bills, for example? As you know, it's not a government or party vote. It's per row, Mr. Speaker. You want to come back? Are you going to accept, Mr. Speaker, through you, that we have electronic voting? Yes or no?
We'll go on to Mr. Generous.
So yet again, our Prime Minister is AWOL, absent without leave.
Channel Report.